But what do we do today then? So how are we gonna how do we swing through? What do we do?
Honestly, general chat. You sent me some amazing facts about yourself that are really interesting. Um, as a point to note, and probably a lot of people um, found you in a similar form. My first interaction with yourself was through the Play on Tabletop videos.
Oh, okay, right.
Finding, I think it was the Imperial Knights versus Chaos Knights,
Yeah, that
40k
bloody
and
moving.
40 minutes,
Yeah.
and there was just, I think there was two things about it that really caught my eye and well caught my ear, I guess. Was one was the editor's notes that constantly said, "Watch out for Jind because he's loud and he's going to be loud through the whole game," and it
Yeah,
was
no
the
worries.
fact you were excited and like you were passionate about what you were playing, and that's brilliant. But secondly, having kids myself, I think you said a line at the beginning, which was, "I love playing nights because the games end really quickly and I have more time to spend with my kids." I was like,
Yeah,
that is a cool thing to shout.
yeah. I save like 2 3 hours a game session because of the nights, right? So it's pretty epic.
And from then, I've kind of always had a couple of knights around, so I've been like souping them with other armies, like custodies and things like that. And with Arc of Omens, that's free, so it's great. Um, and then a friend of mine was taking, I think I sent you a picture of his awful minis. That's the actual
Yeah,
name of it.
they
Yeah,
looked, they looked amazing though.
yeah. He took four big knights to Nottingham. That was it, and I think he had fun rather than did very well. But
Right.
still, it was fun, and seeing them come on the table and putting them down, I was like, that is cool. Um, and then just recently, from then, through a few trades of armies that I'm just really not touching, I've managed to get a larger uh, night collection and shown kind of interest in it and trying to test it out and build on them. I've actually, annoyingly, the wrong way around, I've got two Castellan and a Valiant, so I need to sort that out and get rid of them.
You got you got one Castellan, one Valiant.
Two Castellan, one Valiant.
No,
Through,
nothing wrong with that. You only need to get rid of one Castellan. You're fine to have one of each.
yeah, I was thinking to get down to one Castellan but have both the weapon options, so I could always do that in future.
No, no, no.
Um,
You want two. Does it show the
it
night?
does. It looks really good. Yeah.
Nice.
And then I've now got 10 Armigers, a Paladin, and it's just it's as it does. It builds and grows, and I've got a big enough collection now to really fill
Nice.
the army properly. I think the things for me that were most interesting were the fact that you have, well, you're moderating on the Facebook group for knights, and so that's giving a lot of people who, like myself, are new and learning about knights and learning about how to run them some access to vital and key information, especially from someone that is being seen as someone that is someone to look for in knights. Um,
Yeah, which is kind of weird, right? I never asked for that, but it's kind of there now. Like people, oh, you should do it. I'm like, oh, I'm just a normal dude, right? I'm not the be all and end all, but I just happened to have got onto a show and then
it's the
made a
way it
video,
goes.
right?
I think, like I spoke with Wallace last week, and he's never seen himself as the Chaos Demons guy, but since doing all the leaks, that's who he is, and everyone knows him for it. And you can just say his name, and that comes up. And
When a certain image is now built up around you, and you're expected to be in a certain way and to play in a certain thing and all that kind of a stuff, and you're almost trapped by your so-called success, but it's not so much success, it's just it's unlooked for and unasked for, but all of a sudden, hey, you're the Imperial Knight guys. Like, I guess so, right? But I have way more, as you see from the message I sent you, I have way more armies and hobbies than just knights,
absolutely, yeah.
as this room will show you, right? So I'm actually really excited about today because it will show people I'm more than just a knight guy.
Okay,
But
that's
my
cool.
the majority of my passion is knights for sure.
Yeah. So for me, it's that. And then I suppose someone who's looking to start knights themselves, what are your recommendations
Oh yeah,
of
I
how
can do
they
that.
might do that? And I suppose the last one is we were saying, and you said as well, you're well known for bringing a Castellan into a
We
majority
can
of
definitely
lists,
we can
and
definitely delve into the
yeah,
Castellan.
and because
Yeah,
just traditionally, I think in the previous edition and this edition, there's been a much closer swing of people bringing 13 armigers, and bigger knights are left behind, especially Castellan just being 600. I think your last list had him at like 660 points, something like that. So it's a
No, I
huge.
think he's 615 or six something. He's the base cost, right, where you don't take the extra pair of cannons.
Yeah, but I
So
think you
whatever
had
the
the. I have to get the list to dig it up. 655, I think. Although you didn't. No, you
yeah,
didn't. You
because
didn't have the siege.
he doesn't have the twin seeds, but he does have the exalted court.
Yeah, so 640 total. Which
Yeah. What was the
in
exalted court called again? Which one did I take there? Just so I
you
know when I
had
talk about it later.
the Master Tactician for 30 points.
Yes, yeah. Which is pretty
And then
clutch. But
there's loads of really good stuff in it. You know, especially in the UK now that the rules come out for Mysterious Guardian, that you can definitely bring it down on first turn, hidden. You know, there's a lot of good stuff there. But what I mean is, like, I think people see 650 points on a model, and that should be like Primark level. It's even more expensive than Primark, and so a lot of people just leave it at home or not touch it. And I think from yourself, you're the first person I saw doing it and having that inner list and building around that. And then there's been a lot of talk about how that is the most powerful list to go for now. I think even Art of War guys came out and said the best knight list they can see currently is a Castellan with Armigers. And that was after you
potentially, there's some
potentially.
downside
Obviously, there's a
to
lot
it,
of, you know, and who knows, you know, people didn't think Zinch was the army to go for. Everyone said Khorne was the only way to go for demons, but that's been proven completely wrong again and again now. I think, again, even Art of War guy said that Zinch was never going to be the army to take, and it's one tournament, so you know, no one knows. But so I guess the first thing then is what started you looking at knights? I know you collect multiple armies and you have a huge collection variation out there, but in particular, what started you looking at knights?
I think that goes back to when I was 16, and my first ever experience with GW was actually Hero Quest, right? So it wasn't Games Workshop, but it was designed by Games Workshop. So the board game was my kind of door into the hobby. Anyone of the era, I think the majority of us, that was our main way into GW, right? And so I came in, there's no Hero Quest, there's all these other cool games. And so my friend drew my attention to this game, and it had these like tiny scale figures, and it was these big, massive titans and these tiny little space marines, and it had orcs in there and it had Eldar in there, and it was just called Epic Space Marine. And so it had 6 Warlord Titans and a bunch of Marines. But when the second edition came out, it then became called Epic Titan Legions, and it was the first time we ever saw an Emperor class Titan. And so it had an Emperor class Titan, 2 Orc Mega Gargants, and then it had for the first time ever Imperial Knights, which we've heard about or read about, but never seen as models. And so you had Paladins, plastic Paladins, the Lancers, the Knight Baron. There was the Castellan version, but it wasn't the Castellan we know today. And so I had a whole Knight household and a full Titan Legion, and I had the full Space Marine chapter of the Imperial Fist with the accompanying Imperial Guard regiments to go with them. And so yeah, that was my jam for the longest time. Just loved it until it fell out of favor, and the game kind of went to the wayside, and it was harder and harder to get people to play it. And then years and years and years and years later, decades later, you can imagine my heart attack that I had when they did the reveal for the very first ever um, Imperial Knight, right? When the Paladin slash Errant kit came out, and that was it. I was like, yeah, it was like Bill and Ted
Oh,
from
perfect.
Gotta Be. Was it Bill and Ted? No, it was. Who was the one? Golf, Wayne's World,
Oh,
right? When he's looking at the guitar, he's like, "You must be mine," or he's got, "You must be
yeah.
mine. You gotta be mine." Yeah. Oh, dude, I was obsessed at that point, and so yeah, that's when I first got into the Knights. And this was when knights weren't really accepted because they were super heavies, and in those days super heavy Lord of Wars would come in through an expansion which wasn't really part of regular run-of-the-mill 40k. So I had them, couldn't really use them, and they had a bad rep then too. They were very powerful, and so it wasn't until they got the first codex uh, that I started kind of collecting them in a bit more hardcore fashion. And that's when we saw the good old Castellan come out with the first type of armigers and stuff, right? And that was kind of in 8th edition. But I still wasn't playing knights in 8th edition. I was just collecting because again in 8th they were still pretty good.
So what were
And
you
then
playing in 8th at that time then?
oh, thanks to Mr. Mordian Glory, my commander in chief, I was just pure god all the way. I've had god since like 5th ed,
Well, you mean
5th ed or
Mordian
4th ed.
Glory, the YouTuber?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh,
I've
really?
always been I've always been a hardcore god. Now I'm not a 40k guy, by the way. I am first and foremost fantasy, fantasy. From Hero Quest to Warhammer Fantasy, from every edition of Fantasy all the way to 8, and then the world blew up, right? And then AOS came out, and I initially was very resistant towards AOS, and I was floundering, and I wasn't really enjoying 40k either. But then when 8th edition came out, I just couldn't get enough of the way 40k now played in 8th ed, and I was all in. And at that time, Mordian Glory, when I found him for the first time, was making all these videos about God. I became addicted to just listening to him ramble on about the God. And so I just started playing God, and they were just terrifying, and I was just doing great all the way for 8th. So I had a really good run with the God in 8th.
As a bit of a clang to throw in there, I don't know if you saw his video on the Nottingham tournament, but he was very
I did.
complimentary of his first opponent. And that was me.
Oh, it was. Oh,
Yeah, he was really nice. He said like how good he was, how nice he was, such a friendly
nice.
opponent. And I was like,
He's
me.
awesome. So that's great, man. I like him a lot. So I'm a big Mordian Glory fan.
Nice.
One of his, I'm on his Patreon channel and stuff. He's just awesome. But then when Ninth came out, um, so this is now also, don't forget the pandemic's going on,
Of course.
right? And so we're all in lockdown. Everybody's in lockdown. And so a couple of fellows, one of them actually won the ITC once. He won the entire ITC circuit, Jim Vessel, with his Chaos way back in the day. And so he's like talking to some of the other main folks around here in British Columbia. And he came up with this idea of like, because restrictions were about to be eased up by the government, where you could now start doing in-person meetings as long as you wear masks, but it wasn't like public meetings. You could go to someone's house and play a game. So he came up with the great idea of doing a league, a 40k league, where you would, in your city, you'd have a league. So I'm in Surrey Delta, and you would play 5 games over a 10-week period. So you basically, it's a tournament on BCP, but the round takes up to 2 weeks to play. So you have a window to get a game in with your opponent. And so I became the rep for Surrey Delta. And so I was going to just take care of the division. And I thought to myself, there was no requirements to be painted other than the fact that you wouldn't score the 10 victory points for being painted, for being battle ready. And I thought, I don't like playing with unpainted models at any event, right? And B, if I'm the Surrey Delta representative, I got to show up with a painted army. I can't just not come with a painted army. And at that time, I had nothing painted for 40k. Nothing. I had lots of things started, but nothing finished. So I was actually going to do my Ultramarines for the league. And then I looked at how many models there were. And then a good friend of mine, Ryan, who's also on the Facebook page, but he plays Chaos Knights. And he's also got a little YouTube channel as well, Hammer Pattern. And he goes, hey, why don't you just do your Knights? They're almost ready. I'm like, oh, yeah, why not? And so I got the first list battle ready for the league. And now we're in season 5 of the league, and I've just couldn't stop enough. So literally for the entirety of 9th edition, I've just exclusively played with the Imperial Knights in any match play setting. But obviously play with my Necrons, my Ultramarines, my God, my Demons in casual games. And when people, because Knights aren't always the game that people want to play all the time, right?
Yes, absolutely.
I guess we can talk about that a bit later as well. But that's basically my story into why I play Knight so much. And then it also comes down to the fact that my kids were quite young during this time. And when I kind of brought this subject up with my wife initially, she's like, oh, and I was like, are you worried about people coming there? She goes, no, because she works at the hospital, so she knows what healthcare is all about. And she knows if we follow the rules and stuff, we'll be all right. But it was the fact that she didn't want me to take out so much time.
Yeah.
And so not only were the Knights going to be the easiest army and the quickest army to get ready for battle ready, but as I played a game or two, I realized I was saving so much time. Because, with the Ultramarines, it takes me about a good 30, 40 minutes just to pack them up to get rid of out of the house.
Yeah.
And then you get there, and then you have to unpack, deploy, play your games, put them away, come home, unpack again. With the knights, it's just like, haha, here's my little tray. Anywhere between four
Good and
to
done to
10,
go.
15
Yeah.
models. Off you go. You deployed in minutes, you packed up in minutes, and you come back. Everything's good. I was honestly, and the games are so fast too, compared to like with Ultramarines or anything else. You know, once a model dies, hey, I have 25% less thinking to do now because 25% of my army's dead. And so I was probably saving maybe 2, 3 hours per game session. And so it was a
Wow.
great way to budget playing 40K competitively while still having a very young family at the time. And now the family's expanded. I've got another kid now. So it's even more crucial now that I play Knights because I don't have the time to do all these big projects, right? I mean, this year I've been working hardcore on getting the Necrons up and running.
Nice.
They're literally just in assembly stage right now. They're about 40% built. So I've built my first 3,000 points. I still have another 3, 4,000 to build. Forget basing, forget painting. I'm not even anywhere near to that, right? But the knights are all there, ready to go, and it's knights.
That's brilliant. Yeah, my knights are at that stage. They're still being stripped to make sure they're good because I got this one second hand and it just needed a bit of a breakdown of the colouring.
Yeah, I would say to the listeners. So if you're looking to get into the knights, right? I guess we can talk about that. Like how like
Yeah.
I play knights because I play knights, and it's going to be knights for life. I have every single edition of the codexes on my shelf, including some of the hard to get limited ones. Got any novel to do with them? I've got the T-shirt, right? I've got my seals, my purity seals, right? And even got like the medals and the paraphernalia. So I love everything about the knights, but why would you get into the knights? And I would say if you want to play knights, you're only playing knights because you love the knights. It's not it's a love-hate relationship I find with the knights. You either love them or you hate them. There's no real in between. So either you love the aesthetics and you like the feeling of having the big mech suits and that's what you want to do, or you just don't like it at all. Right? It's very rarely you're gonna find someone just kind of drift into an Imperial Knight army. The second heavy lift with the knights is that on paper we seem very powerful. We've got insane stats. We look tough. We've got lots of firepower, very oppressive. And then you play a few games and you realize that it's probably one of the harder armies to play with, to get started with. It's not an easy army. It's a very punishing army to play with, which sounds counterintuitive. Some armies are very forgiving. Necrons would be quite forgiving. Space Marines, to an extent, are forgiving. You may
Depending on the
not
one you
win
go for. Yeah.
the one yet. And when I'm saying those two armies, you may not win lots of games with them to begin with, but you have a lot more freedom to kind of learn with them because it's easier to score points in many respects with those kind of armies, right? With our army, it's very hard. It's such an exact army. It's very punishing as a player to try to pick up knights and really get going with them. And so I find sometimes there's that big initial excitement of coming in, and then there's a drop off after that, right?
I've heard
And so
before
you
that
got
knights is like a form of playing chess in that sense, where you have to be, as you said, very precise about your movements, make sure you're kind of taking those objectives, and because you haven't got
you have to be
troops to
so
spread out and so forth.
so you have to be so exact because I don't have an Imperial Knight base handy, but I can give you an example actually with this base here. So when you want to start with knights, forget the models. Think about these things first, right? There's the collecting and painting element of the hobby. Then there's the gaming element of the hobby, and then there's the lore and the background portion of the hobby. And I find of all three, for me personally, it's the lore and background first and foremost. Then I look at the collectability, then I look at the gaming. But everybody's different, and some people don't even care about the lore and that kind of a stuff. But for whatever reason, so let's say we want to play Imperial Knights for whatever reason, you know, there's a lot of things that you got to worry about as an Imperial Knight player that you might not have to ever think about playing other armies. So here's a ruin, here's a Space Marine, and I want to go from here to here. So I measure my 6 inches, and off I go. Done. a lot of people don't realize this, but say, here's my Imperial Knight. And it doesn't seem intuitive until you start playing a few games, but to go from here to here is actually quite a complex process. So if I was an armiger or an Imperial Knight, what I first have to do is you have to measure from this part of the base to the edge of the building. And I have to go in a straight line a number of inches until I completely clear the building. Now, imagine an armature is 4 inches, so that's a 4-inch move with the round base. Now, the armature is actually a little bit more straightforward than anything else, because once I move my 4 inches, I can then move the remainder of my movement in any direction. But when you're playing with the big guys, this is the second part, which is not instinctively...
They've got these big oval ones.
Yeah, you move, and now, even though the back of my base is going to remain in place, and I want to go like this, the distance from that starting position to the ending position is a move, and it eats up my inches. So I've gone 5 inches this way, 6, 7, 8, 9 inches. I've just moved 9 inches, but it doesn't look like that because all I've done is gone here and I've done this. But the minute any part of your base moves, it's a move. So movement is exacting, it's critical, it's crucial, and you could be off by fractions of inches, and you can lose games from that, right? I lost. In a recent tournament, I won. It was a 5-game event. I won 1 free and a tied, and I lost 1. The only game that I lost actually was because 40 minutes into the game, the actual table physically collapsed and everything fell on the floor.
I saw that on the Facebook group. Yeah, that was crazy.
Nightmare. So the tie came because at the beginning of my deployment phase, I put the model down without pre-measuring 3 turns ahead, and as a result, I was literally just not even this far away off an objective with my 3-inch consolidation move. Fractions of an inch will kill you in this game. We don't have the model count to sustain mistakes, right? So movement's really key. But this is the best part about playing Knights to me, was learning the movement phase and how to deploy and move models, right? So when you're deploying a model, you're all of a sudden, you're not just plopping it down, you're thinking of 2 things. How much protection can I give my model? Because ideally, as a Knight player, you have to deploy and pretend you're going to go second. You're going to go second, so you have to endure an entire turn of shooting. So that's going to really...
I couldn't see any, but is there no redeploy options at all for Knights?
No, none. None. And when you have models which are 25% of your entire army, you lose that before the game even starts. You're playing a 1,500-point list against someone's 2,000-point list, and it's very hard to come back from situations like that, which goes back to your comment of armature spam. It's why armigers became the de facto meta for Knights, because you can hide them behind buildings and you don't suffer that. It's called the first turn alpha strike, or the turn 1 alpha strike, where if you go second, you just get blown out of the water. So that's pretty critical. So as a Knight player, you're looking at like, okay, how do I minimize going second? But at the same time, I have to expend so much movement to go sideways before I can even go in a forward direction. So how can I get to various objectives in a relatively straightforward fashion that I can start getting some board control? And that's just the movement and deployment. So once you get your head around that, the second aspect of the game, which I think Knight players will do better than anybody else in the whole game system, is target priority. You only have between 4 to 15 models to play with, right? Depending on the kind of army list that you go with. And so you don't have the luxury of having multiple units to get the job done. So if something needs to go down, you really have to prioritize how you're going to fire those weapons. And so one of the biggest problems I see with a lot of new Knight players is they really love to split fire and spread the firepower in different directions. But you have to think yourself, as a Knight player, everything you do, deployment, movement, shooting, combat, before you even make any of those decisions, including command rerolls and stratagem use, every single decision, you have to ask yourself a single question. And this is not just for Knights, it's any competitive, high-level competitive play. Is the action I'm about to do going to score me points, or is it going to deny my enemy points? And if there is not an answer to any of those, it is an irrelevant thing that you are doing. Because if what you are doing is not scoring points or taking away points, it's a complete waste of move or firing or what have you. So when it comes to target priority, if my opponent has a unit on an objective and he's got three objectives and I've got three objectives or two, and if I don't get them off that one, they're going to hold two, hold more, and they'll score the extra 4 points over me. Or the following turn, I can score more over them. So I will do target saturation and I will make sure I overcommit to destroying a particular unit, depending on how critical it is in terms of scoring points or denying points. So target priority becomes huge. The only time you split fire is when your back is to the wall and you're losing, or it's a knife edge game and it's called the Hail Marys, and you gotta go for it, right? Which is where the Castellan really comes into, in my opinion, is literally the best unit in the whole book, regardless of what edition we're in, because it has the potential to take out multiple units all on its own if it runs average to hot. There's times when it does nothing. Nothing. I've had times when my Castellan has done 0 wounds to somebody. And at that point, you may as well have just not had the bloody model to begin with, right? It's just so bad when that happens. So the target priority is huge. So I would say the journey for someone would be, you play with the knights. First of all, just get used to moving, master the art of movement. Don't care about your scores and victory points. Just master the art of movement, deployment. Then the second part of the game to focus on is target priority. Learn how to obliterate enemies and how to move in such a way that you can get overlapping fields of fire onto certain targets while still scoring points and doing what else needs to be done, while still screening out the enemy, while pushing people back from your own objectives. That becomes that part of it. Then at the end of the journey, stage 3 of the journey out of 4, is then you're now learning the stage where you're just learning how to score the maximum points possible for yourself. And then the final part of the journey is you've mastered movement, combat, shooting priorities, how to score points, and then the part that separates you from an average player to becoming a top level player is how do you deny the opponent points, right? So it's not just about scoring the points. You got to be like Leonidas when he says to the Spartans, take from them everything and give them nothing, right? That is the mantra for competitive play with knights and with any competitive play in 40k. Take from your opponent everything and give them nothing. 100-0 or 110. Sometimes you have to give them 10 the painted. You can't not have them be painted, right? But actually, you could. Yeah, I will challenge battle ready. If someone's not battle ready, I will bring it up and I will bring it up to Tio, because it's not about being a pain in the butt. You know, if you want those 10 points, paint your models,
Yeah.
paint them properly, right? And that would be the 4 stages of the competitive play. Give yourself a full year of playing before you start taking yourself seriously, before you start looking at your results. The first year, you're just on a journey. It's just a learning journey. Experiment with the things, try out different units, different combos, different secondaries, different oaths. Just give yourself that whole year of just a journey. Don't ever focus on the results. The only result should be by the end of the year, you're going to be really into that army. You'll know the ins and outs of it, and that's any army in particular. If you're going to go into a new army for the first time, so it's not just so much knights, but that's just kind of like competitive.
No, I think that's really good. It kind of leads to a point though. You're saying of competing. So I know that whenever I've gone to a tournament, one of the armies that I haven't wanted to come up against often is knights, because sometimes my force physically doesn't know how to deal with it. Last year I was running a lot of Harlequins, and the only option I had really was fusion blasters, fusion pistols to try and deal with them and run away, essentially. And then even with Nottingham, I took Thousand Suns, and the best thing I could do was spend all my CP on a block of Terminators to try and shoot them, and it was like, one night's gone and there's still loads to deal with. So you were saying earlier how you often don't play them against like friends, you'll play some other armies. Is that purely a sense of people haven't teched against them?
So the problem with the knights is the great thing about knights is it's big stompy robots. The bad thing about knights is that the big stompy robots, right? We are an absolute binary army. Do you have anti-armor? Do you have the capability to take out armor? If you can take on the knights, and if you can't, it's just going to be a drubbing. right? And you can still and will win. The percentages show, if you look at the latest meta watch that just came out a few days ago, we're not trumpeting it up there. We've
Yeah, I
actually
mean,
dropped
below the 50%. Yeah.
way below, right? We're definitely beatable. But even if you beat us, it's not a pleasant journey because you have to just basically eat whatever crap that the knights are going to throw at you. You have to play in such a different way. You're not really playing true 40k. You have to play this really weird version of 40k because you're hiding all your assets. You're keeping out of sight. You're going for all the objectives which are completely passive and the opponent has no interaction with you. You're just trying to hold on to the primaries, and you're literally just trying to score more points than your opponent before you get tabled. So there's a guy called Brandon St. Pierre, local player, fantastic player, very highly ranked. Drukari does really well. And 2 times in a tournament setting, I've met him, and both times he's tabled by turn 4, and both times he's always beaten me on points because he managed to get enough points before I could start scoring it. You know, does he want to play me every single week to get tabled week after week after week? And he has to play in such, he can't afford to make one mistake. He makes one mistake, I can wipe something out. And it's just, it's a very, very heavy lift for the opponent to have to face knights all the time. So in a competitive setting, I really don't care. I'll bring my knights and I'll face anybody. Because when you go to a tournament, facing knights could be the same as having to face 40, 50 Deathwing Terminators.
Of course.
Or to face whatever meta is going to throw at you. Whatever min-max piece of filth is going to be chucked at you. It's a tournament setting. It is what it is. But then you come across someone that's got his very thematic, fluffy army who's just there for fun and just to meet people and have some beers and roll dice and just wants to show off the beautiful painted army, but they don't care about the wins. It's a tournament setting. But, you're coming to my house on the weekend and you're either having to get permission off your partner, you're having to cash in some brownie points with someone, you're expending fuel and time when you can do stuff, and you come over and then someone whips out the knights and let's go, it's going to be great for me. It's not really that two-way interaction. So when I'm playing off the scene, when I'm not playing on the circuit, I'll always ask my opponent, say, what do you want to do? What do you want to try? What do you want to play? I got all these armies. And if they say knights, it's normally because they're practicing against knights and they want to learn. Brilliant, I'll bring it. But I don't have to bring the pain. I'll ask them, do you want to bring the pain or is it like a training game? Like, do you want to learn or, you know, the options? Or like, if they want to play one of my other armies, hey, I also like trying different stuff, okay? Just because I like chocolates and ice cream doesn't mean I don't want to have a hankering for peanuts and crisps, right? So it's nice to play different armies against other people when they come in. But you must be very much aware of that when you're playing at a local game store, local game club. If you are primarily knights, you're going to have to just accept that you might get branded as being that person.
Yeah.
That people just don't want to play against, right? It might be harder. Easy to pick up games at a tournament. They have no choice. They are there by not even social contract. They're forced to play you. The pairing has come up. Go play the knight player. Ooh. But in a local store setting, you're gonna have to wanna figure out how to manage, because it's not about winning. Winning is about managing the other person's play experience.
Yeah.
Right. So what I find with that is, if I'm playing at a local game store and it's just some friendlies, I'll take cookie lists. I'll take oaths that I wouldn't normally take. I'll go for secondaries, which are bananas. I'm not going to throw the game away, but I'll basically start off with a really weird set of builds and stuff, and I'll just try my best with that and see how it goes. But if you see that your opponent is about to get absolutely drubbed, you can always ease off the gas. You don't have to necessarily go for the juggler.
Yeah.
And so if you want to be a successful knight player, it's not just about your win-loss ratio. That's strictly for the circuit tournament. To be a successful knight player means that you can consistently get games in on a regular basis, and people still like you, and they look forward to playing with you. So
that's
invest
a really
in
good
the
way to
lore.
think about it.
Yeah, you got to invest, and that's why I like investing in the lore. That's why I like all these knickknacks. That's why I like naming my knights. That's why I have a story. Knights have a story, right? I mean, back there, the relic, the bastard's helm.
Yeah.
It's a auto take relic, right? At the end of the day, you're gonna take it always. We could talk about actual lists and relics later, but it's an auto take relic. So when people talk about at the beginning of a tournament, you allocate a few minutes to go over your army. So I go, listen, you go over, tell people. I said, then I pick up my Helverin, and he's got a very beautiful quartering on the back. He's got half white, half red, and that's to show some of his nobility that he's got in him. And I call him Sean Bean, and they go, "Why is he Sean Bean?" Because I go, "Well, his favorite word is bastard, right? He's a bastard," and because he's got the bastard's helm. And so what it is that the Dominus is the only actual Titanic knight that I have, the only true noble in my army list, right? And then I've got the 9 hommages to go with him, which is the bondsman. Noble guy, great guy, but in his youth, he had a moment of weakness, and he had a bit of a lover's engagement with one of the serving wenches in the keep. It just happened the one time. He was very remorseful, covered in shame after the fact, and since then he's been very faithful and virtuous to his noble lady, right? What he didn't know was that she fell pregnant, and she actually gave birth to his bastard son, Sean Bean. And he did find out eventually that she had this son, and he figured out through discreet inquiries that it was his kid. But the woman was very herself, even though she's a serving lady, has never pressed her boy's suit, just kept quiet, never even told the boy about what's going on. But the boy has figured out who his dad is. He eventually became a squire in the ranks. And so the dad from afar keeps an eye on his son, but has never acknowledged him. The son, he himself could easily try pressing his bloodline, but he's got that nobility that his pops has got, and tight lips. And so to this day, he knows that is his dad. The dad knows that's his son, but they don't know that they both know, and they suffer in silence. And so I'm just waiting for that one game where they're just gonna acknowledge each other as father and son. And when that happens, I kid you not, I'm gonna be weeping like a baby. It's just going to be a very, very moving moment for me, right? So I always tell folks this story, but in a very shorter version, right?
Yeah.
At a your time's ticking away. But
No,
stuff like that.
Yeah, I like that.
Love stuff like that. You put a bit of personification, and so people get excited. You get them into the army. You tell them little tidbits. I got nothing to do with the game and stuff, but it just you're buying someone into the narrative, into the lore. And I myself am very much narratively and lore driven, and so it adds to the game experience. Right, and so most of the tournaments I go to just literally have only the battle scores, but there are events where there's sportsmanship and these other kinds of things, and those are again very valid tactics that you have to employ as a knight player, because you have again the heavy lift. You are that guy, which that title used to be reserved for Tau players, and I'm sorry, Tau players, that you have this tag, but you deserve it. It's okay. A lot of the bias is being built into me from Mordian Glory, from his own hatred of the Tau and the Tau community.
He took Tau to Nottingham when I played him, so.
Because he lost a bet.
Yes, yeah.
And the patrons forced him to do so, right? So, but jokes aside, I got nothing wrong. Who cares I don't care what army you play. I play knights or whatever. Who am I to say what to bring, what not to bring? Again, these are all things that I would recommend knight players. If you want to consider yourself a knight player, what has been knight player? You want to get into it. These are all things that you want to kind of consider. Think about one of the most beloved groups of players in 40k. Which faction, I'm going to ask you right now, which faction of 40k players are generally seen as the most fun and the best 40k players in terms of I want to play a particular faction? Who is the most fun and energetic faction that kind of comes to mind?
Oh, I mean, the weird thing is for like my local group of friends, there's 2 guys that play Space Wolves and won't play anything else. So
yeah,
so that for me, it's almost in Norfolk. That's that. I'm not sure. What would you put it as?
Not me. The world orc players.
Didn't even think of orcs, honestly.
Right? So exuberant is the you tell me you've not met a real orc player that doesn't actually shout "wag" when they wag, right?
I heard somewhere that you can't play an orc army until you've played every other army, given up on it, and then gone to orcs.
Right? And you look at the love they put into their armies. How many insane kit bashes do you see with an orc army? Looted this, looted that. So much creativity, so much passion, and generally their book is always at the bottom of the competitive cycle. And so these people play their army out of just sheer love. They show up to represent, right? So they're on that spectrum. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you've got, say, the knights and the Tau and some of the other armies that are more reviled and hated. So we have a heavy lift. And so you gotta have to embrace some of these other aspects of the army if you want to kind of get past that and get people to see you for who you are. Because at the end of the day, the results tell you we are not broken. We're not overpowered. We're extremely beatable, very beatable. We have such a steep learning curve, more so than anybody else, I think, in a lot of armies. There are armies definitely way harder to master than the knights, but we definitely got one of the harder learning curves to pick up on. So, it's an injustice when someone just writes you off because you've got big stompy robots. There's so much that goes into that army to make it work, to make it function. You may have had to spend a year or two on the circuit before you even started getting any decent win record, before you even got to the 50-60% win record ratio. So to have someone just write you off because you're playing knights is a bit it's a sad feeling. So I do urge people to kind of really look beyond the army, the data sheets, look more into the lore, take pride in the heraldry, the markings, name your models. It goes a long way. Give them little stories as time goes on. A model may have done something epic in a game where, like in one of my play on games, that one armiger was holding off a big despoiler class knight for like more rounds than it ever could have done, right? It was an epic moment. Give the fella a name or the girl a name, give the steed a name, right? And let people know this is the so and so and so and so, and it adds a lot to the game. And so it can take away from the part where you're now just smashing the crap out of people and just trying to score all the points off them.
So earlier you touched a little bit on why you take a Castellan and it's over, massive firepower. In recent lists, there's that option. Are you never tempted to go for like another favoured one out there at the moment is the Paladin with lots of armor because he's giving them kind of buffs. So you seem to always kind of lean back to the Castellan.
Problem with the Castellan, it's not the data sheet, right? It's the fact that when it was first revealed at one of those big conventions, and I can't remember if it was Adepticon or Nova. I don't know where the reveal video was, but I just remember sitting there. And how GW does that beautiful thing where the model comes on and it kind of slowly turns and it quickly turns and it slowly turns and it quickly turns, right? And it was just slowly turning, quickly turn, and then it kind of pauses on the back. And when I saw the dual reactors at the back with the double reactors, something just exploded with joy inside, and I was gushing every orifice, everywhere.
These parts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I saw that with the smokestack the way it is,
yeah,
I literally had, people talk about foodgasms. I had modelgasm right there, looking at that reactor assembly lineup, right? And I just knew I had to have it. The second I saw that model, I was obsessed. I pre-ordered it. I got it the day that it came out. I built it the same day, almost built it the same. I'm a slow builder. Such a slow builder because I'm very anal. I'm almost OCD when it comes to building. Not a single scrape of mold line anywhere can remain.
Yeah.
Which is why it's going to take me about 2.5 years to build my Mechanicus army, because every single rib, and that model's 90% rib, every single rib I got to go in and out with a knife, everything. I can't leave any mold lines behind, right? I just can't. And so I built it as quick as I could, and I love it. I just love it too much. And I do play games where it's just the regular knights or other kinds of things, right? But it's just it's a love affair with the model first and foremost.
Cool.
And because of that, I've always had it in my list. And because of that, I've had to find ways to make it work. And that's why I've become somehow known as the Castellan guy anywhere, which is kind of weird because like all the things I want to be known for, right? I want to be known as a dad, a teacher, a role model, contributor to society, and I'm Mr. Castellan, right? That's my epitaph. And so that's why I make the Castellan works. That's why I've had to overcome the hardships of wanting to use the Castellan out of love, an obsession with the Castellan, and as a result, I've had to really, really focus in and make that thing work. Because if you're going to bring it to every game, you may as well play with it and play with it well. And that's why it's evolved to the way that it has now. My list completely focuses and revolves around him. He's, I think, in a sweet spot right now in the Arcs of Omen,
Yes.
but I was still using him in Nephilim and Nachmund, and he was still working fine. The only problem with Nachmund and Nephilim was that against certain armies, uh, my skill, my knowledge, my experience all came down to who went first against certain army builds. Because if you go second, you know pretty much, unless they have absolute terrible dice, they're going to blow your guy out of the water and you're
Right.
dead, and you're going to start the game with a 1,400 point list against a 2,000 point list. And it's a very heavy lift to come back from that. But it was what it was. But now we're in this new era, and I think he's a terror if you want to use a free bait lance.
Especially now with, I think we mentioned it earlier, but the Mysterious Guardian of not having him on the table immediately. Do you kind of try to take full advantage of that, of putting him down on the first turn or even later at a point where it's needed rather than having it available?
I never deploy my Castellan ever.
Yeah.
He's always off. Ever since Arcs of Omen has come out, he will never go in. Why deploy him? There's literally no reason. If you go first, bring him on and shoot. If you go second, bring him on and shoot. Never ever deploy him. No need to deploy the guy, right?
Fair enough.
Why?
And then with a lot of the kind of Arcs of Omen elements, one of them that's come in has been the free edition of Imperial models, especially with knights. So there's been a lot of talk around bringing particular assassins, and I was curious what your thoughts are in doing that, or does that deviate too far away from like, you know, your love for knights as they are, rather than adding in assassin pieces? Like, I think,
I mean, competitively,
a lot of people talk
if
about
I
bringing
bring
Calexis as an option to,
yeah, I
and
mean,
stuff.
competitively, if you want to bring in an inquisitor, an assassin, or some inquisitorial henchman, you know, it's going to open up your gameplay a lot, right? The only problem is though is every point I put into anything not a knight is less knights for me, and so I find it very hard to let go of that. And at the minute, my list is creaking. It's I've stripped everything down to the bare minimum. My poor Castellan doesn't get to take twin siege breakers, which I'm so sad. I don't like the twin missiles. I like the twin siege breakers, not because the guns are better, because when I put both the twin siege breakers on, it looks like a walking battleship. And I love that aesthetic, right? And so I can't even find 15 points for the siege breakers, let alone to have to bring something else in. And also, I think my problem is I've been running the same list now almost for a full year, for 2 seasons of 40K here in British Columbia, plus the tournament scenes. And so it's not a matter of bringing in an assassin. It would then require a complete and total rethink of my strategy, because every single piece of my army has a very, very specific purpose. And I think we can go into that a little bit later if you want to talk about, like, you know, lists and stuff, and how would you go about making a list and that kind of stuff. But I have a very unique, specific purpose for this entire. Every model has a place and a purpose, and so it's not a matter of just swapping something out and bringing something else in. It would require a complete rebuild up from the ground up of the mindset.
No, that's fair enough. I appreciate that.
So if you talk about Arcs of Omen, we'll just expand there for a second.
Yeah.
I actually think the Dominus is not the best choice to take as an allied knight. I don't think he's good, because the thing that makes him good in the Imperial Knight Arcs of Omen is that he's a part of a free blade lance. So you need that because you want to make him. We want to get him as a master tactician, as a knight, you know, with the exalted court, because I want to give him 2 free blade abilities. Mysterious Guardian, it's a one-shot deal. Once you've done it, ta-da, I'm here, and then there's no more benefit from it, right? So you need to have a second tradition to give him some extra punch. In my case, he's House Tyrannus, because I want to give him a 6++ additional save against taking wounds, but not mortal wounds. But you know, when you got 28 wounds to begin with, that's an extra 2 or 3 wounds over the course of a game, and that can be pretty critical. It can also play with someone's psychology, because if your knight's down to 4 wounds remaining, and I shoot you with a gun which only does 4 damage, I'm gonna have to overcommit into you because I'm worried that you're gonna roll 6s. And so it forces people to chuck more at the Dominus, which means it's less pressure being taken on by the rest of the team. But you also want to make, you need to give him relics and warlord traits and all this kind of a stuff. And all you have access to as an Orcs of Omen player, if you want to bring in an allied knight, is literally one free blade trait. So I would actually say, I think, and it's going to be a hot take, I think a spicy inclusion would be to take free warglaves. Either free warglaves with Mysterious Guardian, or two to free warglaves, Mysterious Guardian, or 2 to 3 Helverin, Hunter of Beasts.
Yes, the 100 Beast one is the one I put with my Custodes.
It can be a track. Custodes need it because they like that long range anti tank, right?
Yeah.
Custodes and Helverin with Hunter of Beasts is just an awful relationship in hell. And it's just devastating. It's a very, very difficult relationship to break through, and it's really good. So as an opponent, I hate seeing that because that's something I don't want to play into. If I played Custodes, I would do that all day, every day.
Yeah.
But if I'm playing God or Marines, and I can actually take out range threats of my own, then I would actually just do the Warglaves with the Mysterious Guardians, because nothing says I love you more than some rampaging Armiger Warglaves in your Keister turn 1, turn 2, coming in from unexpected angles, because they've got the range punch with the guns, and they've also got the combat punch, and they've also got the obsec. So I think those, again, depends on the kind of army you have to start with, but those would be my two almost go-to for Orcs of Omen inclusions. Why not the Dominus? Because all you get is the ability to come in turn 1 or 2, but you don't have access to any upgrades to increase his efficiency. And that's the problem the Dominus has. In order to make it work, you have to invest almost everything into it to overcome its unreliability and to overcome all its weaknesses so you can get the most out of that model. Because when you have a bad turn with that model, it's a bad turn for you, period. So it's I wouldn't necessarily recommend him in an allied spot like that. Just free blade lance only.
Yeah. In your main army you said you've been playing for the last 2 years, I can't actually find the original listing right now, but do you keep Moiraxes in there, the Forge World Armigers at all, or do you stick with plastic?
I got Ferrari. One of my lightning locks is called Ferrari. Nice. Just because the paint job makes it look like a Ferrari in my eyes.
Right.
They're brilliant. There's actually the Moiraxes are really good. So the lightning lock is good, but so is the rad cleanser with I think it's called the graviton or whatever the other weapon is.
Yeah, it's like a Volkite, isn't it?
There's a Volkite and a graviton, but those two patterns are delicious. The lightning lock for just clearing out chaff. It's the best chaff clearer we have by far. It's great for taking out hordes and screens. But the other one is really good too with the rad cleanser with the built-in claw. Not as powerful as a Hecaton Siege Claw.
Rad Cleanser, and then you can have it with I think the main kit comes with a Volkite. I can't say the second word, Vuglare. And then you can buy the upgrade of Graviton Pulsars, which look really good. I haven't played with them before, but they're
good.
Free point. They don't cost any points.
They're great. They're really good. So both of those variants are really good. So I do have one lightning lock in the list right now. I do own 3. But the other 2 are still being built right now. They're still on pieces and sprues, let alone painted. But that lightning lock, delicious, especially because of the free blade trait, where you can, against 6+ models, you can reroll any number of hits. It's not missed hits; it's just any hits. So when I roll my 12 dice, anything that's not a 6, I pick it up and I roll it again, and it's called fishing for 6s.
Yeah.
And it's delicious. It's so delicious. You can just, it's just a great. And so the other Forge World Knight that pops to mind is actually, I affectionately call her Maggie, but the Megara.
Yes.
She was really popular in 8th edition, and then she fell off the face of the earth in 9th edition. But you know what, Imperial Knight players? Think about this. MetaWatch says that, the top 4 factions right now are representing a significant proportion of the meta. Like, for example, Dark Angels, Terminators, and what have you. Maggie is bristling with damage-free. She's got damage-free coming out of the yin-yang. Armor of Contempt is gone, and so she's a really, really, really solid option. Yes, you don't get the Bondsman, abilities. But hey, my armies for the last 2, 3 years, I've never had any bondsman abilities outside of the Bastard's Helm,
Yeah.
and still doing great. Don't get me wrong, bondsman's great if you can build your list into it. But don't let that be the only reason why you don't want to take a Megara. I think she's got a lot of play. I wish she could just go down slightly in points because they bumped her up at the time when she was kind of a bit oppressive, and then they never kind of adjusted her since then. And
I
that's
think at
one of the problems
LVO
with it.
last year, someone took like 3 Megaras as part of their
Yeah.
main army, and yeah,
Well, she was really good then, though. She was
I've
in a
seen
hot
now
spot,
that
right?
a few people are talking about bringing. I'm going to get the name wrong, but the Styrix, which is essentially a Megara, but with a claw and a Volkite cannon instead.
Possibly. I'm still not a fan. I
Yeah,
like the ability to spike. Right. This comes back to me being a Warhammer player. My primary army for Warhammer was the Goblin faction, pure goblins, not even the orcs, pure goblins.
hmm
Because on a bad day, they were grossly terrible. On an average day, they were bad. But on a good day, they would spike, and you would pull out an occasional win. But when they spike terrifically, right? And I think that's what I like personally is getting inside your opponent's head and not allow them to mathematically plot out the game. Because if you can spike with those sixes on a House Tyrannus save, or you spike on a sixes to hit with exploding hits, you can't plan for that. You can't build around that. And so it always remains a credible threat in your opponent's mind. And even if they dedicate a minute of their thinking time, that's a minute that they've now become distracted by something. Whereas if you don't have those things in your list, you're very pedestrian, it's very linear. I can mathematically plot out that, okay, dice are dice, they're going to go hot, cold, but on average, I can kind of plot this out. And so I kind of like having that spice thrown in. So for me, it's Megara over the Styrix, but Styrix is good too. But I just like what Maggie does, and it's the flat free on the lightning lock, which is perfect for her.
yeah, absolutely.
And even in combat, flat free, it's tremendous.
That's great, man. Perfect. I'm trying to think what else we discussed at the beginning to cover. Now we were going to do the Castellan, which obviously we've covered now. You were saying about getting into the army.
We haven't really talked about.
Yeah,
We haven't talked about how a new player would start, like in terms of what models to pick
yes,
and
that'd be
stuff.
the best way. Yeah, so I was thinking, what would you suggest for 500 points? Is probably too small, really. But let's say like 1,000 point game.
No,
Get someone
500 is
going.
perfect.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So if you're very lucky and you can come across a store which has the Chainbreaker Lance from Christmas, snap it up. Best deal in the whole world. It's like get 2 of them, right? But if I was getting into Knights today, brand new, I would always start off with, and I have access to no discount sets, for example. Right, you can source out Facebook Market, eBay, and other sources, or you can go to local stores, Games Workshop Direct. But first and foremost, 2 boxes of armigers, done, minimum. Always 2 boxes minimum. Ideally more, but you want to start off with 2. A word to the wise with those is when you build them, the model is essentially a single model, and you do get the entirety of the lower guns for the thermal lance and for the Helverian autocannon. The only downside is that this piece here, the shoulder and the kind of the bicep, is a shared between the two. So there's 2 options for you. One is get 3D printing of the upper portion, right, and then just glue on the bottom half. The second option
My favorite thing.
is the magnet, right?
Yeah, magnets.
Just
That's so many.
get a magnet. Now, for my Imperial Knights, for the big guys, I actually just did. I did basically the 3D print for the upper arm for the big guys.
So you can
and
just
so I
pull
have,
that through and pull it out. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I've got a. I don't know where I put it, but it's. I got a box, and I have 12 or 15 extra arms in a box.
Ah, okay, cool.
Because this upper portion is a single piece
like this
3D
little piece
print.
there.
That's right. That it comes as a single piece, the whole thing. You don't even have to build it. It comes as one piece. And so I got an STL file, got someone to print it for me, and I've just literally opened up all my sprues, and I grabbed everything, and I built everything, and I have arms galore everywhere. My dream is to magnetize all those so I can stick them on a wall, and it's just a whole bunch of just want a big array of arms everywhere, just hanging everywhere.
Nice.
So I'd get the two boxes of the little guys, and either get the 3D print or the magnets, and then you can switch out between the two. Another pro tip is the shoulder pads glue onto the top carapace for an armature. Don't glue that top to the body ever. Leave it off, because then after the game's over, all you do is you very gently pull the exhaust apart, very gently, and just pop open the carapace and put the carapace guns in there, so the melter and the stubber. Close it, and then travel with it, because you will never lose your carapace gun ever again. And if you ever want to switch between the melter and the stubber, you can just do so by just opening up the top and getting the right one. Because before I learned this trick, you have no idea how many stubbers I've lost over time, and I've had to.
I understand what you mean for this. I'm gonna grab one of my.
Let me. I got one right here. I'll show you. So, I got one right here. I'll show you.
Yeah, I got some. I can share.
So here's my fella.
Yeah.
He's battle ready. He's battle ready. He's got his paint on his stuff, right? But the game's over, so I get my stubber, and look, I just gently widen here, and I keep all my little guns in there.
Nice.
I was like, oh, the game's over.
So,
Okay,
so
stubber
that
goes
bit's
away.
not glued down then?
Oh, you don't need to, right? And then, when you're putting it back on again, you just very gently widen it, and it just pops right down. It's very snug. Even if you turn it upside down, it doesn't come off. But both your guns are in there. You never lose them, my friend. Never lose them.
I need to look at doing that.
Right?
Yeah. So
it's
this
glorious.
one, I've been trying with this way. This one's one of many that to come. So that bit's come off, but I've left it off just so I can change the gun out. But I never thought to take that top part off. That's great.
But you can do that too. I mean, in this case, when it comes off, I can very happily switch out my guns by just doing the rotation. So if I 3D print this part, I can just swap out the guns that way, or I can magnetize. But either way, it's great storage for the carapace guns, and so I do that always with the little guys. And when you're building, by the way, never ever glue any of these armor plates on. I'm just using good old blue tack. Everything's held on by blue tack, right? And then when I've fully painted the skeleton and I've fully painted the plates, then I will physically glue on all my armor plates everywhere with glue, but I will still not glue the top on.
So how come those ones aren't glued on yet? Just because you're still doing extra bits or something?
Or much painting is yet to be done. This is called, in my mind, there's two types of painting. There's what I call is battle ready and parade ready. This is battle ready. So battle ready is where every element of the model has been painted. Trim, lenses, housing of guns, and all that kind of a stuff. I've put on, in this case, like it's got stripes on the top, right? To show that he's a character. This one's a character. That's why it's got the half white. Any of my armatures that has a splash of white on the carapace is a character. Just for my own insignia and ranking and stuff.
Yeah.
So like, you know, when you look at it, it gets my battle ready score because it's fully painted and it's been based up and stuff. But I haven't shaded, I haven't weathered, I haven't applied all the transfers. And when I do all of that, then it's going to become parade ready. And then when it's parade ready, it means it's, in my abilities, it's painted to the best of my ability, which I'm not a great painter, but it's to the best of my ability. Then I will permanently glue all the plates and stuff on so I don't lose them. But I'll keep, like, the top carapace open.
That's great.
And then I think I've only got the one... This is the only one who's got plates painted, but you can see he's got the transfers, there's a color gradient difference. He's got, let's see, on this side, I don't know if you can see, but there's like heat scorching on the gun.
Yes, yeah.
Right? And then I've even done little striped cables and stuff. So he's as fully painted as it could ever get to. I won't touch it again, but it's my parade ready. But that's why I glued all the all the plates on him. Everything else is basically
apart from the
battle.
top.
Apart from the top, but he's
Yeah.
actually glued on the top too because that was one of the first ones I built, and the wisdom hadn't dropped in yet.
Oh, I love it. That's brilliant.
So start with the 4 armigers as a base, because also that's 3 of them is exactly 500 points, which is Crusade. Start playing Crusade with your friends. Crusade is very fun, and we actually have probably one of the best Crusade sections out of any 40k codex in 9th edition. It's so great. So play Crusade, learn all your basics, and then your next investment would be a big guy. Now that's going to go against the grain because the meta is all the small guys. But you know what? You know, when you go to McDonald's, what are you going for? Burger and chips, right? Or fries. You're not going for the salad. So you're an Imperial Knight player. Get yourself a bloody Imperial Knight.
Yeah.
Right? Get yourself an Imperial Knight. Get a big guy, or a big girl, or a big dumb. Whatever pronoun you want to use for the big un. Get a big un. And same thing. Either get STLs or magnetize, and then you can have options for days.
Yeah.
That one you will want to glue down the carapace eventually, but I actually blue tack only my shoulders, and it's totally fine for gameplay. They never fall off. But the nice thing is, I can just lift up the shoulder pad and just do the 90-degree rotation and just swap out my arms, right?
Nice.
So yeah, you get that. You got yourself 1,000 points, and at this point, you're just gonna go on a happy journey of playing and really figuring out what it is that makes you tick. And because you can't tell someone how to collect their army because it's so subjective. It's like, how can I tell you if we go out for dinner tomorrow what you should eat? It's all subjective to your palate, and I find 40k is so subjective because if you want to be sneaky, run around, and you want to be fast and do this and do that, you might gravitate towards House Raven. And then you're going to be very aggressive, and you might go for very aggressive kind of builds. If you want to be more stationary, you want to have established fire bases and do this and do that, you might gravitate towards another house, another kind of a build. But it's going to lean into what secondaries you like to play, how you want to play your primary game, and that again is going to influence what kind of knights you're going to collect, right? But ultimately, all we have is 3 types of models: the armigers, the big guys, and the Castellan. So I would normally say you'd want to eventually have a situation where you can have 9 to 15 armigers, maximum of 4 Questoris, and 1 Dominus, ideally 2, because 2 is cute, but like even 1 is fine. But when you get to that point, you'll probably never have to get another knight for the rest of your life, unless they come out with new patterns in the future. But in the beginning, you want to either think of yourself, well, what kind of army do you want to run? So have you heard of, Stephen, some of the knight players, they use that acronym of like a 1-9 or a 2-6 or a 3-4?
I'm assuming in reference to 1 big knight and then 9 small ones.
Yeah, so I run a 1-9.
Yeah.
But I could also, the other list I ran was the Castellan, the Errant, and then I had 6 armigers.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
That was one of my seasons of 40k that I played, and I did okay with that one. I think I won a 1-4, lost 1 with that one. This is the 1-9 list that I run, but you could then take a regular knight instead of the Dominus, and that will give you enough points to have another little guy in there, so you can run a 110.
Be a 110, yeah.
Yeah, or you can run 2 regular pattern knights and 7 regular armigers, or you could run 3 big pattern knights and 4 to 5 armigers, depending on which big pattern knights that you want to take, right? Don't think about meta. Meta is irrelevant, right? Look at the guy that won the LVO classification for the Imperial Knights.
Yeah, his was 3 big knights and the 4
3
small
Questoris.
Ones. Yeah.
3 Questoris and 4 or 5 little guys.
I think he had his... I feel like he had them on display at Nottingham, because I swear I've seen them. Yeah.
They're gorgeous, right? So he's an American dude, and he's now retired from the Knights, and he's gone over to his initial first love, the World Eaters, right? So we miss him on the scene, but he defied conventional wisdom, and he did great. Why? Because he understood how he wanted to play his game of 40k, how he could Leonidas somebody by taking everything from them and giving them nothing in return, and then he leaned heavily into that, and that became his style of play. And that's why my Dominus works for me personally, because of my mindset, the way I like to play my game, the way I like to do stuff. So it works great for me, but it might not be replicable by somebody else. because everybody's got a slightly different way of how they want to play the
Mm-hmm.
game and how they understand the game and what level of understanding they are in their 40k career. It seems weird to call career on what is essentially a tabletop game, but if we go back to an earlier conversation when we talked about the 4 stages of learning,
Yeah.
depending on where you are in that stage of learning, the dominus you might not be there yet, right? And sometimes the best thing is just to go and just suffer a year of loss until you get that, until it clicks, and then off you go, and suddenly you can have a lot of fun with it.
That's great, honestly. We might have to like call it there now-ish, only because it's so late here.
Yeah, yeah.
But I really, seriously appreciate your time, man. This is more than I thought it was going to be, and so thank you.
It's because I like to waffle.
No, no,
I do
no,
go. I do go on.
no. I don't mean in that sense. I mean in the sense of you had some seriously good thoughts in there that I was like, I've never thought of them, of the game that way, and so I really appreciate
I see.
that. Yeah, that was really cool.
Okay.
Yeah,
I had no idea what I was going to be saying until I came in.
But
So if you found
really,
anything useful,
yeah, it was really good. Thank you, appreciate it. Normally, I mean, if you're okay with it, I'd love to talk to you again about more. Honestly,
anytime, man.
Because this was so good. But you were saying earlier you were potentially doing your own YouTube thing. Is that happening? Like, can I link to anything at the end of the video, or?
Oh yeah. So me and Sid have been talking about it. We're just basically gonna low technology level channel. So we're not looking to do bat reps or anything like that. Minimum possible. Not even editing if we can get away with it. We're gonna probably take that Warhammer Weekly format where we just literally talk, and then just go straight out without having to do anything to it, right? But we're just gonna talk about the journeys and the models, and I can talk about data sheets, or we can talk about tactics,
Yeah.
or when like things come up, kind of like what Mordian Glory does, but maybe not as passionately or as frequently.
Yeah.
One thing I'd like to
Yeah,
do
he's
in
doing
there
it
is
every day, I think, now at the moment.
like, because it's his full-time gig now. He's making enough extra income off the Patreon and stuff that he can. It's almost like a little. It's not making. I don't think he makes as much money as he did working full-time, but he's making enough that it's a going for him, right? But
Yeah.
One of my big passions was Lord of the Rings. It still is, right? And back then there was a channel called the GBHL, the Great British Hobbit League, GBHL YouTube channel. And before they got married and had kids, they were very regular content producers. So every Friday there was a weekly show called The Plantier with 2 guys from London, and then every Sunday there was called Speak Friend and Question, kind of based off Gandalf's saying when he goes to Moria. And that was every Sunday, and I loved that one because that one was on that video, people would put in the comments the questions that they had or lists, and then the following week they would go in and just read the questions, the comments, and answer them all one by one. And then the next week they would go in, and the previous week's video would now have a new bunch of questions and stuff, right? And so they would go in and just answer anything. And so maybe something along that lines too, where maybe either on a video or a Facebook post, we'll say, hey, listen, we're going to be talking about any questions, or people can just throw the questions in there, and then we can just pull them all off and then try answering them and stuff.
Yeah.
Just as a repository for night players, I think.
I think that'd be really cool. Yeah. Do you have for the moment though, until that's like a live thing? Obviously, I'd love to talk about it as well. But do you have an Instagram or anything I could link to someone to if they wanted to?
Nah, man. But people just seem to find me on Facebook. Like you found me on Facebook. This dude. So this fella. I remember this one time. I get a message from this fella. Hey, Jind, I saw you on the Play On, and I'm a night player too. And I was going to be in BC in the next little while. I was hoping maybe if it's not too much, could we meet up and maybe even play a game if it's not too much? And I, without even thinking, yeah, sure, let's go. And he goes, what, really? Yeah. So I thought nothing of it. So this fella comes in from Thailand, and my wife's like, who's coming to our house today? I'm like, I have no idea. She goes, you don't know? I don't know. And it was just happened to be one of the nights where my kids, this was before the third kid, and we weren't expecting the third one yet. And she's like, so who's coming? I'm like, I don't know. I have no idea, right? I don't know who this guy is. And she goes, what? I'm like, yeah, whatever, man. He's a hobbyist. What's he going to do to me, right? And that's a kind of a very dangerous mindset that I think I have personally. There's been no end of people that have come in here and who's coming in? I'm like, I don't know, right? How do you know this was? I don't know, right? Anyway, comes and it turns out he lives in Thailand, but he's originally from the Philippines, and now but they moved to Surrey in British Columbia, and then they moved to Edmonton, and now his work has taken him to Thailand for a short little bit, right? He works for the government, so they just got a short-term assignment for him out there. And he brought his knights with him, and so he comes and like we hang out and stuff, and then we take him for dinner. So we go to the pub, and we're eating and stuff. And my wife's just looking at him, and she goes, "Why do you keep staring at my husband like that?" Because he's sitting next to me, I'm here, and my wife is opposite. He goes, "Oh." He goes, "Don't you know? He's like the Kim Kardashian of the Warhammer world." And I'm just laughing, and my wife was like, "What?" She goes, "Yeah." He goes, "We love like play on and all this kind of stuff." And he goes, "Yeah." When he came on, we're like, "Oh, go Knights!" And so there, he was just like, and she was blown away. And so we're just having a great night. We're just talking and stuff, right? And then he let slip that he was a huge fan of Tau Nick, they call him, but Tau Nick to the world, but to me, it's just my mate Nick. We knew this guy way before he was, we knew each other from Lord of the Rings, right? And so I just kind of messaged my mate. I'm like, "Hey, I got a guy here. He's not going to be here for long. Like, can I bring him to the studio?" He's like, "Yeah, sure." So as we're leaving the restaurant, I said, "Oh, by the way, what are you doing tomorrow?" He goes, "Nothing. Why?" He goes, "Oh, I figured maybe you want to meet me. I'll take you down to the studio. You can meet the guys." And then I realized that me and my wife were still walking, but where is he? We look back and he's still standing outside the pub, his jaws like this. I go, "Breathe, man, breathe!" And so we took him to the studio. It was so cute. He got to see everybody, and so he just randomly found me on Facebook. So
that's amazing.
Yeah. But we will do this. Me and Sid have been talking about this. We were gonna get it done sooner, but it's just we both got busy a little bit recently.
Of course. Yeah.
But we are gonna do it for sure. It's always been one of my dreams is to do.
I meant to say thank you.
Informal.
I meant to say thank you for the link up with him. It turns out he's added me on Facebook since, and it turns out he's from my hometown. So it's kind of weird that
there you go.
He's like, he's going to Maidenhead and all the old cinemas that I know, and I was like, "Oh, that's my old school."
He's I liked it a lot.
Yeah. So
and it's straight for Facebook. I just randomly messaged him one day and it was like, "Hey Sid, I think you're awesome," and we just got talking and stuff, and now we've got a pretty cool developing
nice
friendship. But I just love and respect what he's been doing for the community with regards to making that page, encouraging, just going out to these events and just representing to the best of his abilities. Final thing I'll say to you is so last year I go to my wife, "Hey, do you think I could go to the LVO, the one that just finished in January?" She goes, "Yeah, go for it." I'm like, "You kidding?" She goes, "Yeah, just go," because my kids at this point are old and older, and it's gonna be all right. Told my mates, we're all ready, we're all excited, and we're all planning to go to the LVO. And then the bombshell drops in a few months later that we're expecting another one, and that baby was going to be due November just gone. So I had to cancel any plans of going to the LVO. But 2022, because we're in 23 now.
Yeah.
2022 was the green lighted year for me to play as competitively as possible, meaning I could attend events and stuff. So I was going to go to some of these majors and opens and all these other kind of things and really push for it, right? But then everything kind of got bamboozled and skewed by the baby news. So last season I ended third in Canada, but actually technically was second, even though our final league finished before the end of the 40k season and we submitted the token to ITC. Some kind of technical issue, and our results were never uploaded into the overall final rankings. But that would have put me back to second in Canada. But the reason I couldn't go first was because the first ranked player had managed to get to some of the big opens and stuff, and I just couldn't get to any of the big events once I knew the baby was coming.
Well, you just got to find an excuse to come to London this year. You know, they're looking at coming up to 1,000 people for that one. So.
Well, I am coming to England in June, but it's only for a week. It's for a wedding.
Yeah.
But apparently Sid lives pretty close to the airport, so he said we'll try to meet up before he goes, and I'm going to try to make a trip out to Warhammer World. So I'm going to try to see him before, at least even if it's for half an hour, for a high five, handshake, hug. And then I blackmailed my sister. Told her she's got to take me to Warhammer World because I want to get my picture taken at the wall with the. I want to have my little medal on.
Yeah.
and I've got a Warhammer Hero T-shirt, and I just get a picture taken there, right? Because
That's
why
fair
not?
enough. Yeah. Oh, I love it. Thank you. Yeah, really appreciate your time today, and yeah, thanks for squeezing me in around the family and
Yeah, you
everything.
know,
So,
man.
yeah,
I love yapping about the night. So anytime you want to talk about anything else, you just let me know.
well, I appreciate it. Thank you ever so much, Jind, and have a wonderful day.